what's up YouTube? It's Blacktop here. Today I wanted to bring to you a discussion on hand traps in Yu-Gi-Oh! And why I don't think they're that much of a bad thing. Maybe you agree or disagree, and maybe I can change your mind if you disagree in this video. So before we begin, a hand trap, for those of you who don't know, is basically a card that you can send from your hand to the graveyard during either player's turn, and it has a really good effect. So you'll see what I mean when I get into them. So the first one here is Ghost Ogre and Snow Rabbit. I'm just going to kind of go over a couple of them. This is the quote-unquote one of the ghost tuners. And it is during either player's turn when the card or monster effect on the field activates its effect, or a spell or trap card that's already faced upon the field activates its effect. You can send this card from your hand to the graveyard and destroy it. It doesn't negate, it just destroys. So this is good against continuous spells and traps as well as field spell cards, which is why it's cited or used in the main deck against Spirals, because Spiral Resort is a kind of a nasty card to deal with, so this gets rid of that pretty easily. And it's pretty generic. It's not negating, but it's destruction, and you can use it with any, well, pretty much any effect. The next one is Ghost Reaper and Winter Cherries. It's the second of the Ghost Tuners. And the reason they're called Ghost Tuners is because they all have this ghost name, and they're all like zombie or psychic type. So I don't know, but they call them the Ghost Tuners. Anyway, Ghost Reaper is good for the mirror match. Basically, you can reveal a card in your extra deck and banish all copies of that card from your opponent's extra deck. That's during either player's turn. It's a quick effect. So, well, actually, it's not really a quick effect. It's a conditional quick effect. If your opponent controls more monsters than you do. So that's Ghost Reaper, Winter Cherries, Ghost Ogre, and Snow Rabbit. This is, sorry, Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring. Ooh, screwed that one up. This one is by far the most expensive out of these three. And it's probably the most expensive hand trap on this list. I don't know. But this is the good one. This is the one that negates. Doesn't destroy, but it does negate. And it negates any of these three things. Adding a card from deck to your hand, special summon from the deck, or send a card from the deck to the graveyard. So that's like, oh my gosh, like a fifth of the cards in the game right there. Probably more. That this thing can negate. It's absolutely crazy. And it's so powerful. I think right now it's running about 70, 75, 80 bucks a copy. So yeah, it's pretty good. Clearly, a lot of people are playing this in the main deck, and it's really good. That's why. The next really good one that a lot of people play is, it's pretty much a staple in all decks, is Max C, and this is the drawing hand trap. So basically, during another player's turn, you send it from your hand to the graveyard. Each time your opponent special summons a monster or monsters, immediately draw a card. Pretty straightforward. I mean, drawing and card advantage in Yu-Gi-Oh! Is absolutely important, and that's why this one is there. Cyframe Gear Gamma is kind of, it's like the card that negates the hand traps, basically. So in this one, if your opponent activates a monster effect while you control no monsters, see, that's the condition there, no monsters, you can special summon this card from your hand and one Cyframe Driver, which is this level 6 vanilla from your deck, and then negate the activation, destroy the monster. However, during the end phase, banish the Gamma, and the driver. And that is an important part of Cyframe Gear Gamma, because they don't stick around to be able to summon Cyframe Lord Omega, which is a really great card that these two can go into. But it is good just to negate hand traps. That's what people will side that. Droll and Lockbird. This is used in a combo with Trickstar Reincarnation. Didn't really see a whole lot of play until then. But Droll and Lockbird. If your opponent adds a card from deck to your hand, except during the draw phase, you can send this card from your deck to the graveyard, your hand to the graveyard, sorry. For the rest of the turn, neither player can add a card from their deck to their hand. So basically what you would do is you would have, you'd either have two Trickstar Reincarnations, or your opponent will add a card, like with one of their searching spells, which is really common nowadays. And so you play Droll Lockbird, they can't search for the rest of the turn. Also, you play a Trickstar Reincarnation, and since this effect is banish your opponent's entire hand, and if you do, they draw the same number of cards. But if you play Droll and Lockbird, they don't have to do the second part of that effect, and so they don't draw. You just banish your opponent's entire hand. It's really great. So that's why that combo is really good. Here are some other ones people don't play as much. DD Crow, banish a card in the graveyard, or from the graveyard, sorry. That's pretty good against decks that have a lot of effects that activate in the graveyard. I don't know, not much to say about that. Skullmeister, this was reprinted in a special edition, like a couple months ago. And this is kind of like, it negates graveyard effect, so it kind of works kind of like DD Crow a little bit, but not the same. Now I included this one. This one is not so much a hand trap, but it sort of is. At the end of the battle phase, if an opponent controls more cards than you do, you can make your opponent banish cards from their field face down, so they control the same number of cards as you do. If you control no cards, and this is the part here, you can activate this card from your hand. So it essentially makes it a hand trap. And so what people will do is, your opponent makes you go second. Your opponent makes this huge unbreakable first turn board. Your turn, main phase, battle phase. In the battle phase, activate this card from your hand. Your opponent probably can't negate it, might be able to, I don't know. And basically your opponent is left with one card. You make your unbreakable board main phase 2, and away you go. That's why a lot of people hate this card, because it is kind of unfair. And it's really expensive too. And other people don't like it for that reason. But anyway, it's very powerful. People play it in a lot of decks. Not much more to say about that. I mean, you can just look at its effect and tell that it's a really beastly card. Now, the next two here, these are upcoming cards. I think this one's coming out in Extreme Force, Contacting Sea. When your opponent normal special summons a monster, except during the damage step, you can special summon this card from your hand to your opponent's field in defense position. It's not like the rest of the hand traps, because you don't send it from your hand to the graveyard. You kind of summon it to your opponent's field, and then your opponent has to use this card as link material. I don't think it's going to be as good, because for the fact that link monsters are really generic. Like, you know, link monsters take, oh, 3 plus monsters, 4 plus, or 4 monsters, 2 plus, you know, it doesn't have to be a specific thing. So they can easily make use of Contacting Sea. But if your opponent doesn't go into the extra, or doesn't make a whole lot of link monsters, this is a great card to use, because you basically lock them out of their extra deck. If that's the case. I know in my Pendulum Magicians, I have a Decode Talker right now, which I could use this to make, but if I didn't have a Decode Talker and only had a Heavy Metal Foes Electrobite, I couldn't make this, because Heavy Metal Foes Electrobite is 2 Pendulum monsters, and this is not a Pendulum monster. So it'd be a good card to use against that, but overall I think it's a little, kind of, it's useful in some situations, but I don't think you'll see a whole lot of play. Who knows, I could be wrong. And the last one is, I think this is another Ghost Tuner. You have level 3 Ghost Tuner. And basically this is like, kind of like Ash Blossom. It negates activations. Adding a card from graveyard to the deck, or to the hand deck or extra deck, especially from the graveyard, or banish a card from the graveyard. This absolutely shuts down Blue Eyes. I mean, heck, Ash Blossom does too, but Yashiki Warashi also shuts them down. This is going to be a good card. It's coming out in Flames of Destruction. It's going to be a secret rare, and it's going to be the chase card. It will. It just will. Now, it's probably going to get renamed, because all of the Ghost Tuners have, like, something, something, and something, something. So this is going to be, I don't know what it's going to be, but it's going to have the AND symbol in there. It's going to be a Ghost Tuner, and that's pretty much all I know about it right now. We'll get more info later. Now I want to talk about why hand traps are actually pretty important in this game. And this will be a little bit shorter right here. But the reason is, they allow you to gain advantage or to shut down your opponent, and everybody can use them. So people will say that, well, okay, look at these meta decks that can make these huge, you know, unbreakable first turn boards. It's kind of unfair that they can play hand traps to shut down their opponent. And I say, well, yes. But if you're a rogue player and you can't make a huge unbreakable first turn board like your opponent can, and you use one of these cards, like Evenly Matched, or to wipe their board, or to stop them from searching something, it makes it a little bit more fair that way. Or Maxi too, which Maxi is great in all circumstances, because you can just get a lot of draws off of it if your opponent's making a special summon heavy first turn board. I think hand traps are vitally important, especially to rogue players. I know they're kind of expensive. Well, I mean, especially things like Ash Blossom or Evenly Matched, but I think they're absolutely fair. I mean, especially when you have cards that can negate hand traps. I mean, for goodness sake, you have a Cyframe Gear Gamma. I mean, it's not as good because you have to run this dead draw vanilla in your deck, and you're really hoping you don't draw it. But it's still fair. It's fair. Definitely fair, because you can negate other hand traps. And I think there's a card coming out. I have no idea what it's called. I think if I search From the Grave, that might get it. Oh, that's not. That's not going to do anything. But it's a card coming out in either Extreme Force or I think Flames of Destruction actually. Same set as this one. Yeah, I'm never going to find it. But basically, what it does is if your opponent activates a card, it's a quick play spell, so you chain it, and it says that your opponent cannot activate the card if there's a card in their graveyard with the same name, basically. So if your opponent already Ash Blossomed you, you play that card, your opponent can't Ash Blossom you for the rest of the turn or something like that. But it essentially stops hand traps, and I think that's fair. I think that is very fair. Now, yes, it does get annoying whenever you have to scoop because your opponent struggling battles your board, and then your opponent makes a new board, but they can't do anything with it. It makes it fair. It's because, I mean, worst case scenario, what happens is you're playing Spirals and you get your double Helix out there and you get your whatever else out there that you need. Your opponent struggling battles or evenly matches your board. Okay, they make their board. You draw and evenly match their board, and it just keeps going that way. And ultimately, that's what it is, because people have the ability to run as many copies as they want, unless of course it's limited, of these cards in their decks. And that's what makes it fair. It's absolutely fair. I mean, heck, I think even Max C should be at 3 because it's fair. It is like absolutely fair. Because if I have Max C at 3, that means you have Max C at 3. That means we can both have 3 copies of Max C in our deck. Now, sure, it hurts the turn 1 player, but if the turn 2 player tries to make their board, the turn 1 player might have that Max C in their hand. They have a better chance of seeing it if it's at 3, and they have a better chance of drawing more cards. It's pretty simple, really. Now, people do say that hand traps are so powerful and they can negate anything. It's just a 1-card shutdown, and that is, I do kind of have a problem with that. While I think hand traps are fair in their effects, I think the drawbacks need to be much more serious. Maybe not with hand traps per se, because oftentimes, like these the ghost tuners and some of these other ones don't really fit into the grand scheme of a deck. I mean, for example, I have a Pendulum Magician deck, and I run 3 Ash Blossom in it, and they're kind of dud cards, essentially, because I can't use them. I mean, sure, I can make Decode Talker with them, but ultimately, they're not helping me accomplish my win condition. They're just there to shut down my opponent. So that is a drawback, and I think that's a little fair. But for cards like Evenly Matched, where they're trap cards, this thing needs to have a bigger drawback. I mean, sure, you can't attack during the turn you use it because you're going to be using it at the end of your battle phase. So you might have attacked, but you might not have done anything, and who knows? I really don't know. But most of the time, you're not doing anything before you play this card. It's kind of fair that way that your opponent cannot attack during the main phase too. But I mean, that's how a good board wipe should be. You shouldn't be able to, destroy your opponent because you played 1 card to get rid of all of your opponent's monsters and spell and trap cards. That's not really fair. So in that way, Struggling Battle or Evenly Matched is balanced, but I do think that it'd be nice to have a bigger drawback. Something like, or a life point cost or something. Because some decks, and this might contradict my argument from earlier, but some decks, like rogue decks, you can't make as big of boards. If their board does get wiped, they don't have the comeback ability. And so this is sort of a double-sided, this is a double-edged sword, because it really just, there's 2 options here. So basically you can say, okay, you know what, we need to make all decks fair and all decks competitive with each other, so we need to, and the people that have that mentality are also like, let's limit all these cards and let's limit the good cards of the good decks so more decks can thrive. And then the people on the other side of the spectrum are like, no, all these hand traps at 3, everything at 3, like, come on, the best decks will win, and that's how it should be. And I think in order to have a successful game, Konami needs to, sort of find the happy medium between those two. And I think hand traps, as they are right now, and maybe with a little bit bigger drop, like a slightly bigger drawback, I think that would be great. I think that would be the perfect place for them to be. Additionally, making hand traps, such as the 1-time print, or well, I guess 2-time printing, Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring, because it was in a special edition, I think. But reprinting some of the more expensive cards, like Ash Blossom, like Trickstar Reincarnation, Evenly Matched, reprinting those to drive the cost down on the hand traps and the really good cards like that, that would be a good way to sort of build up the game get more people to play, and maybe make people a little less grumpy or angry about hand traps. I don't think they're a bad thing. Like I said, I think they're fair because everybody can use them. They're not archetype specific, or they're not deck specific. Everybody can use them, especially now with the link era and having so many generic links. It's perfect, really. And honestly, I don't know how you could thrive without them, without hand traps, because your opponent would just be able to break or make an unbreakable board, and then you'd have to scoop after turn 1. That's the way I see it. Let me know down in the comments what you think. Like I said, maybe you can change my mind, but maybe not. I don't know. But anyway, this is Blacktop signing off.